الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على سيد الأنبياء والمرسلين اللهم علمنا ما ينفعنا وانفعنا بما تعلمنا وزدنا بفضلك علما وتعليما إنك على كل شيء قدير. Okay, I can't remember what we got last week. Um, okay, I think we're here. Okay. Oh, humanity. So nas, what's the rhetorical use of this in, obviously it means people, believers and non-believers, but for the Quraysh, when you said nas, that means like the non-Quraysh. Right? ثم أفاضوا من حيث أفاض الناس. Then do tawaf al-ifada like the non-Quraysh do. So they used to have these rituals that pertain to the Quraysh and non-Quraysh. So it's like it has this sense of the humanity at large as opposed to the little circle that you're in. Right? The messenger has certainly come to you with the truth from your Lord to believe for your own good. But if you disbelieve, then know that to Allah belongs whatsoever is in heavens and what's of the earth. He owns everything anyway, so it's no skin off his nose. That's the point. And Allah is all-knowing and all-wise. O people of the book, do not go to extremes regarding your faith. Say nothing about Allah except the truth. The Messiah, Jesus, son of Mary, was no more than a messenger of Allah and the fulfillment of his word. Right? Kun fayakun. So here it says a fulfillment of his word. It means the effortless ex nihilo creation of Allah. Right? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created him, not ex nihilo, but ex whatever it is, maternus or whatever the word is in Latin, right? Just with one mother. And so the issue with Sayyidina Isa as well is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions explicitly in the Quran, like the example of Sayyidina Isa is the example of Sayyidina Adam, right? So if Sayyidina Isa is God, then Sayyidina Adam is God squared, right? So that's not really a sound argument. It's also useful in the issue of evolution, right? Because you look at evolution, you say, well, give me a break. Look at all of these things on light, different types of creatures on the earth. There's a very small group called mammals. Like that's not there's of like I mean it's a small group meaning of like one of many 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 groups. There's this group called mammals. They're all pretty similar. And then of these mammals, there's primates. And look at primates and humans, right? It's like we're the same, right? We're the same thing. So it doesn't make any reasonable sense to believe that we're not evolved from apes, right? Okay, well let's get Sayyidina Isa. Let's look at his DNA. Would it make any reasonable sense to say that he doesn't have a father? Like what DNA does he have? Where's his whatever, however it works? Like you have to have you have to have Y X chromosomes, otherwise how are you gonna where did you get the Y chromosomes from? Right? So you say that's a miracle. So yeah, Sayyidina Isa, Sayyidina Adam is a miracle. You say, but yeah, but why is so similar? If he's so similar, they have the same origin. No, it'd just be miraculous. My brother is if you're looking up Dr. Kamal Dingle, he worked on a whole thing on evolution and symmetry and RNA and these kind of things, and it's a whole kind of thing about symmetry and evolution and how symmetry is equivalent or more significant in the process of evolution than the survival of the fittest. So he's a practicing Muslim and religious person. And for him, like it's a big thing. Like he's trying to talk about it and write about it. But for me, like he talks to me and I'm like, it's like a non-discussion. It's like, do you believe in miracles or not? Yeah, okay, there we go. Miracle happened, you know? So for many people that's problematic. Like it's not a very good answer, right? A miracle happened, right? Because it's just too close and too much this and too much that and whatever it is. I don't know why it's so complex. But it's like that, you know. So a miracle. Look, here's Sayyidina Isa. How is he just like other humans? How is he male, even though he doesn't come from a male? Right? I don't know. Miracle. Same thing. So when you say kalimatullah, meaning the effortless, meansless creation, like it wasn't created through the normal means. Right? That's what we mean by kalimatullah. وَرُوحٌ مِّنْهُ, right? a command from him. Kun fayakun, being it is. So believe in Allah and His messengers. Do not say Trinity. Stop for your own good. Allah is only one God. Glory be to Him. So glory be to Him, right? What does this mean? It means, well, Allah is amazing, but the key concept is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala um, is not an arad, ولا تقوم به أعراض. He is not. Give me 1 second. My apologies. So, what does this word arad mean? Arad means an accident, something that exists through something else, such as the rectangular shape of the computer. So the rectangular shape of the computer exists through the computer. If there was no computer, there'd be no rectangular shape. Okay? The motion of your blood, if there was no blood, there would be no motion. Right? So the motion of something, the redness of a red object, right? The softness of a soft object. That's what we call an accident. It's called an arad. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala ليس عرضا ولا تقوم به أعراض. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is neither an accident that exists through something else. So a Christian, they often can't express themselves, but what they believe basically is there is this almost like godness flowing through God Himself and Jesus. So Jesus can be human but God at the same time. Right? So it's almost like a soul in Jesus. Right? I don't think they all phrase it like that, but that's actually what they mean. Like there is like, so when God became human, and it was very painful. That's a very important thing, like the pain, the suffering, right? Basically, like Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala took on the suffering of all mankind to sacrifice Himself, right, for everybody else. So how is it that there was this mortal human that was also God? Because God indwelled in Jesus. That's what's happening. So this is when you say subhanallah, like Allah's way above that. He is not an accident that dwells in something else. He is not a soul that lives through something. He's not the motion that exists through matter. He is not the heat of a hot object or the coolness of a cool. He's not like that. So it's a fundamental misunderstanding of what He is. Right? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is not the love that we feel for experience that we experience. It's not the goodness, right? The goodness that exists in people. Oh, there must be God, right? Because look, people are nice to each other, even though they don't have to be. There must be God, right? That is not something else. So like God is goodness in people. God is the love that people have to each other. God is chi. God is the what's it called? The force, capital F, and like no, that's not Allah. God is energy, God is potential, God is creation, like God is imagination. It's like no, that's not Allah. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is qayyum as-samawati wal ard. Everything exists because of Him, and He exists because of nothing. He doesn't exist through things. He's not in a place. He's not an object inside something, nor is He an accident that exists through something else. Okay, وَلَا تَقُومُ بِهِ أَعْرَاض, and He doesn't, and أعراض do not, and things don't come over Him. He doesn't get happy and sad and hot and cold and move. Like there's no changes. Right? That's not what occurs to Allah. So you look at Sayyidina Isa, both concepts of Sayyidina Isa are just totally off. Right? It's just like totally off what you're thinking about. And in reality, we have to understand that that's for a Christian. You're talking about a Christian, and you just see a Christian like you're talking about Allah, but you don't really know who Allah is. But in reality, it's the same with all of us. Same with all of us. Like we with our brains, we might have some idea of what Allah is not. Okay, in our brains, we might have an idea of what Allah is not. Okay? But in our hearts, we don't really know who Allah is. And we often have emotional pictures of Allah that are not right. Like we don't really get what Allah is. And it can often be in our lives that our iman increases and we realizes it's almost like a different relationship. Because that's not actually like you had a relationship that reflected like there's you, there's a relationship, and then there's a person you have that relationship with. But because you didn't even know who that person was, the relationship was off. And then when the relationship changes, you realize who that person actually is. You know? I don't know if it was what was it? This quote from one of the early scholars. He says, where is this? I think I shared this with Ammar. I'm not sure where's Ammar. I think it's here. I'm sharing the wrong place. Anyway, one of the early scholars, he said this. He says, like, in the beginning of my relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, I made up. I had like these three big mistakes in like understanding my relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and who Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is. He says, I used to think that I was seeking him. Like I'm trying to fight myself to get to him. Oh, I know where it is. It was which class it was in. Well, pretty sure it was in this class. Mishka. No, I know I can't find it. In a so I messed up in my relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala big time in three things. I thought that I was seeking him, but he was seeking me. And I thought that I loved him, but it was actually he loved me. And I thought that I was calling upon him, but he was calling upon me. Right? So that's not really a theological difference, right? It's not like okay, my aqidah changes, but it does change. Like the actual like your concept of what on earth is happening in your life, how things are, your relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the magnitude of Allah's kindness to you is totally off. Like you don't really understand what's going on, you know? It's like somebody who said, for example, my dad cheated on my wife and got drunk and got into a fight and then killed somebody, and then he was in prison for 50 years, right? When in reality, he was kidnapped by the mafia. They framed him, and he used to come and watch over your bed every single night whenever he could. And he did it for the last 50 years, and you had no idea. So you don't know who your dad is. They said these things about you, but actually he really cared about you, and he did all sorts of things for you that you didn't know about, you know? So that's like Allah times a million, or the other round, Allah is that times a million, like or gazillion, like the kind of inayah that Allah has for you, that you're here, that we're here, right? That we're not doing something else is like it's insane, but we can't really understand who and what Allah is, right? So that's why they're talking about like ma'rifah, like what is ma'rifah? Ma'rifah is different to ilm. Like ilm is I know that Allah is one. I know that Allah does not exist from other things. Fine. But ma'rifah is to appreciate that, right? To appreciate and to be cognizant of that. So we're not cognizant of what Allah is really, right? So subhanahu, right? He's far above having a son. He doesn't need things. He doesn't exist to other things, right? To him belongs whatsoever in the heavens, whatsoever in the earth. You see that? That's Allah's way of saying, right? Inna Allah laysa bi'arad wa la taqum bihi arad, right? We in theology, we talk about it in this philosophical way. Allah subhanahu doesn't talk in that way because it's not useful. But like everything goes back to him. He doesn't go back to anything, right? So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is too great to have to need to masquerade as a human to suffer. Like Allah creates suffering. So can you see that like the whole idea that okay, God had to become human to suffer like a human, like Allah creates the suffering. Allah understands you better than you do. So Allah doesn't have to become human in order to empathize with you or to sacrifice. It's not like that. Allah doesn't need to do anything. Allah is sufficient as a trustee over affairs, right? The Messiah would never be too proud to be a servant of Allah, nor would the angels nearest to him. Those who are too proud and arrogant to worship him will be brought before him altogether. As for those who believe and do good, he will reward them in full and increase them out of his grace. But those who are too proud and arrogant, he will subject them to a painful punishment. And besides Allah, there will be no protector or helper. O humanity, there has come to you a conclusive evidence from your Lord, and we have sent down to you a brilliant light. As for those who believe in Allah and hold fast to Him, He will admit them into His mercy and grace and guide them to Himself through the straight path, to the straight path. And then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, they ask you concerning the ruling of those who die without children or parents. So you just have siblings. A man dies childless, so there's no children to inherit from him, and no parents to inherit from him, and leaves behind a sister. She will inherit 1/2 of the estate. All right. And just a side note, I have that on YouTube. You can go put Fareed Dingle. You go YouTube, put halal haram in the Quran. There's a nice like 6-lesson, basically overview of all basic halal haram in the Quran. That included in that is the whole thing on inheritance. It's a general idea. So she will inherit half, whereas her brother will inherit all of her estate if she dies childless. So the sister has a fixed share, which is a half. The brother gets the rest. So he doesn't have a fixed share because he gets the rest. Okay, if this person leaves behind 2 sisters, then they will get 2/3 of the estate. So just 2 sisters, no brothers, just 2 sisters, 2 or more sisters, they'll get 2/3. If the deceased leaves male and female siblings, a male shall be equal to the share of 2 females. So you left behind 3 sisters and 2 brothers, right? So you say what's the ratio is 2 to 1. So treat each male, right, as 2 females. So there's 2 males and 3 sisters, two brothers and 3 sisters. That's going to be 7 shares, right? 7 shares. So each brother will get 2 sevenths, and each sister will get 1/7, right? Allah makes this clear to you, so you do not go astray, and Allah has perfect knowledge of all things. Again, why is that the case? Because a woman doesn't have to pay for anything, right? A woman does not have to pay for anything. Is that actually true that a woman doesn't have to pay for anything? She could have to pay for her parents. She might have to support her parents, right? So there are scenarios where she could support her parents, but otherwise, she gets married and doesn't have to support anything. She's not obliged to pay for anything. Her money is her money. All right, it's a very important concept. Even if your wife is financially contributing, continually restate the relationship factually and emotionally. This is your money. You are under no obligation to pay for anything. Right? Very important that people know, right? Yusuf, this is your coffee. Do you mind if I drink it? Sure, I don't mind, but it's yours, right? Yeah. As opposed to, this is my coffee, I'm drinking it. There's a difference. This is your coffee. Do you mind if I drink it? I'm asking you, and you're perfectly happy to say no, and it's okay, and I don't mind, and I'm not doing this in front of people, so there's awkward, right? And I don't need it. I can just get another one. He's like, yeah, like I made it totally clear to him that it's okay for him to say no, and he said, yeah, go ahead, take it. That's fine. Right? So A woman spending on her husband is sadaqah. A man making it awkward for the woman such that she spends is haram, right? So while it's not awkward emotionally, it's awkward because the guy's got no money. Okay, well then that's something else, right? My husband's making 60% of what we need in the house. So what am I supposed to do? Of course, I'm going to spend the rest because I don't want to have, I don't want to not have food or not, I don't know, whatever it is annoying. Okay, so sister, you're now giving sadaqah. So don't spend on the family, spend for the sake of Allah, sadaqah. That's different. If you want to do that, that's fine. You're under no obligation, and that's sadaqah, and leave it as sadaqah, right? So she says, what else am I supposed to do? You don't have to be in the relationship. Oh, but I want to be in the relationship. Okay, that's up to you then, right? Does it make sense? But it's very important that the woman understands this is my money. I do not have to pay for the things, right? The issue then is what? The issue then is here's a problem, okay? Is we need to be mercantile and clear in order that people know the boundaries, right? But at the same time, it's a bit hurtful when you're mercantile with your wife, right? So I'll give you an example. Your wife needs to go and see her mum, okay? Because your mum's sick. So then she uses your debit card to buy the flight. So what's that called? Stealing or charity, depending. Yeah, you know what I'm saying. So now you sit her down and say, hey, this is charity. So it's like, so she says like, you don't want to pay for it. So I'm not saying that. I'm just trying to make those lines. So it's a bit of a tricky thing as a husband speaking to a wife, right? When you be very mercantile with a woman, it's not very nice, is it? She's like, oh my God, like, are you telling me you don't want to pay? Like, it's like, but so you just have to be careful, basically. You're mercantile in terms of your rights, meaning just telling you you don't have to pay for these things, right? But she also, in her own way, needs to understand that like this is what your rights are, right? And I'm paying other things, right? So like, this is right. What is sadaqah? Charity. It's just charity, right? So it's just now and then there can be an indirect reminder like this is charity, this is not charity, right? So she's feeling like I'm not getting what I need. It's like, well, actually, you're getting in her mind, for example, like, well, of course, I need to visit my mum. I know you need to visit your mum. It's important, but that's not part of the marriage contract, right? So it is essentially extra, right? I love the Yemeni answer, stealing. I love it. All right. But you get what I'm saying, guys, right? So basically you have to be just diplomatic about how you say things, but there has to be clarity at some point. Because if there's no clarity at any point, you're going to have problems, right? So like in her mind, she's not getting her rights. It's important to understand that she's getting her rights, right? And what she's not getting is something extra, you know? So she had to contribute because you're paying off her car. And she's like, man, like, do you have to buy her a car to begin with? You know what I'm saying? So, when things are all nice, it's great, but we deal financially with things when they're not all right, right? Make things very clear. Okay. It's very important. Even if indirectly people understand, yeah, this is, these are rights, these are not rights. Am I making sense? But with a man to a husband, that's easy. You can say, hey, I really appreciate, you contributed this. You're not obliged to do that. Okay. So I'm just telling you, right? It's totally fine if you say no. And I'm not going to be upset and I won't judge you or say anything. Like I totally respect that. You might have other priorities. She might have parents to support and you don't know your wife might have to be supporting her parents and you don't know the details that are happening with her parents. She might have promised money to an orphanage and that orphanage just fell apart and she had to spend all the money over there, right? So there might be priorities in Allah's eyes that are more important than giving charity to you. So you need to give that space, right? So that you're not stealing, right? And let your wife steal from you. What are you going to do about it? Right? Right. Okay. Khair. So we're now on to Surah Al-Ma'idah. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, Surah Al-Ma'idah, O believers, honor your obligations, right? Super unbelievably important, right? I started writing this yesterday. I'm doing these reminders for Ramadan. Where is this? Right, priorities in Ramadan. I should add that actually. Work is more important than Taraweeh, right? So this is a key thing, right? So when I wake up in the morning, like I basically every day I get about 40% of the things I need to get done. That's how my life. Like it's just someone messaging me like Assalamu alaikum, and I know what they're gonna ask me, have you done this? I'm like, no, I haven't even started, right? Because there's just too many things to do. Okay, so that's fine. You have limited time, limited resources, and infinite obligations. But the problem is when you prioritize non-obligations. This is a problem. You prioritized non-obligations, right? So awfu bil uqud, right? Fulfill your obligations. You have made a contract. Are you working during Ramadan? Yes. You know what that means, right? So that means you actually have to work, right? You didn't have Ramadan off. So you come in and you're falling asleep at the desk. You are not doing awfu bil uqud. So there's no point. Just respect yourself and say, I can't work during Ramadan. Well, and then respect yourself, meaning then I don't have this income, and then I can't do this, and then I can't do that. It's like, oh yeah, right. If you don't want to, and then actually have to leave my job, okay, and then leave your job. If that's your priority, right? But you have to fulfilling contracts is really important, right? And so many people, what do we do? The shaitan comes to us and says, sunnahs, sunnahs, sunnahs. The only reason why he's reminding you about Surah Al-Kahf on Friday is because he doesn't want you to do the fard. That's why. It's a trick. So you wake up in the morning, you say, what are my obligations? What are my obligations? What are the things that Allah is actually going to ask me about? Right? Everything else is secondary. Right? Managers, there's a lot of things happening in this department. You cannot get everything done, but what you have to do is find out what those what the priorities are and guarantee that those things happen. Because if they don't happen, there are going to be huge problems. Huge problems. Right? When I taught at school, the kids want to play in the masjid. The kids have to be safe. What's the priority? Kids being safe. So if the kids complain every single day of the school, if the kids want to leave the school because it's boring, if the kids, I don't know, it doesn't matter what it is. If they're not safe, that's not acceptable. So priority, say kids are safe. Okay, that makes it boring. Yeah, make it boring then. What are we gonna do about it? Right? As opposed to somebody who's thinking romantically, oh, but the kids wanted to do wrestling in the school, yeah, but then the kid like hit his head against the wall, remember? Right? And you're not insured for sports inside the masjid. And this is part of the state of California property and all these things like, bro. So priorities, right? Awfu bil uqud. These are the things you have to do, right? And so don't get carried away with, oh, there's an extra fit class. Oh, there's this whatever thing is like, that's fantastic. What are the things you're actually going to be asked about on Judgment Day? That's what we're interested in, right? And a very good thing to do is to leave classes. I don't need to be in this class. This is not extra. This is extra. I don't need to be doing this as extra. I don't need to be this extra molid or this extra dhikr or this extra, I don't whatever it is. There's so many things that just part on your plate. It's like it's not a priority. What is Allah going to ask me about? Have I fulfilled them? Right? And the number one thing is the rights of other people. Right? So was the rent paid on time? That's a huge thing. It's not a small thing. Right? Paying your rent on time. Big thing, not a small thing. Putting food on the table. Big thing, not a small thing. It's not a small thing at all. So it's a very big thing. Right? So, it's a very, and then you start looking at things that I might be asked about, right? Some have said it's obligatory, some have said it's not, some have said this is an obligation, but this is really, really important, right? So, focusing on what are the things Zaid, for example, he's doing all this community work, all that, this, that, and then he gets married and has kids, and he's still doing community work. What's Allah going to ask you about? Someone else's kids or your own kids? Allah's going to ask you about your own kids. So I don't have time to do the community work. Too bad. Your priority is your own kids. So many times I remember not going to the masjid just for my kids. Promise my kids are going to go bike riding. It's like, if I don't go bike riding my kid after promising him and say, I'm going to the mosque, what does that mean? It means Islam tells my dad to lie to me and not spend time with me. That's what it means. So Allah's not going to ask me about not going to the masjid. He is going to ask me about my son, right? Or maybe he's not. I don't know. You work it out, but find out what Allah's going to ask you about and fulfill them. And whenever you add something to your life, right? Reciting Quran, right? Seldom do I do any Quran that's not muraja'ah. There's not review. Why? Because Allah's going to ask me about my review. He's not going to ask me about something else. Worst case scenario, it's makruh in the Hanbali school not to do a khatam every 40 days. Worst case scenario. You don't have to do a khatam. You don't have to read the whole Quran. You, according to many scholars, you do have to review and make sure you don't forget what you memorized. It's like, really? Awfu bil uqud. So the shaitan says, yeah, but do this surah. Yeah, but I have to review those pages and that pages and this and that I haven't done. Right? What's more important? Someone like myself, I'm a geek, right? Like pick up this book and read this random thing or answer the question that people are asking me, right? You're asking this question, I have to read this. Here I have Hashid Sharwani on my book for the last 2 weeks. This one question. So like it's so for me, it's just like an issue, like going through life from one priority to the next priority. There's 10,000 things on the list. As long as I have the priorities right, it doesn't matter. I don't get 10,000 things done. As long as I always prioritize the most important thing first. That's all. That's all I'm interested in, because I'm not going to get everything done. Right? So you are doing Taraweeh and the angels are cursing you because they said, look, he's going to take money tomorrow. He's going to steal again, like he stole this morning. How did he steal this morning? He was asleep for the first hour of work. Or he was hardly there. He was hardly functioning. Right? So why are you praying Taraweeh? But I have to. It's like, no, you don't. Even in the Hanafi school, I remember there's a Hanafi Mufti. He was asked this question. He said, Sheikh, we have 6 hours of classes every single day in Ramadan, and we have tests coming up. I can't do Taraweeh. He's like, don't do Taraweeh. This Taraweeh is Sunnah Mu'akkada, extremely important. You can't leave it without a reason. You have a reason, right? There's other things going on, right? I have to go to Taraweeh. I can't deal with this family problem right now. Dude, the guy, your son just is about to get arrested by the police, and the guy's going to commit suicide. And you're like, I have to go to Taraweeh. It's like, you don't have your priorities right. You're like, oh, the dunya. It's not the dunya. As long as you're prioritizing what Allah wants you to prioritize, it is not the dunya. Oh, I have to get a second job because of this financial problem. The dunya. It's not dunya. As long as you have the intention, as long as you're prioritizing what Allah wants you to prioritize, as long as you are living Allahu Akbar, right? Allahu Akbar, Allah is greater, and whatever He prioritizes is greater, then this is ibadah. But when you're doing ibadah, extra things at the cost of obligations, it's not, right? So again, forgive my continual, misogyny, but like, sister, so the sister, for example, she says, listen, she spoke to her husband and said, honestly, I need like every single week, I need this my time, right? I need like you watch the kids. Like I don't want to watch the kids. I need to go and do this thing. Okay, fine. That's it. But if it's extra, it's not like she's like, oh, I have to go to the masjid every single night in Taraweeh to do Taraweeh. It's like, oh, do you not have obligations towards your husband? So if they can be fulfilled, fine. But if they can't, prioritize things, sister. Prioritize. Right? So people don't prioritize things. Either they prioritize their social network or they prioritize their work or prioritize something else. Like, awfu bil uqud, honor your obligations. Right? And the being married is not easy. There's obligations involved. So either fulfill those obligations or get out of the relationship. Show yourself some respect, right? You're doing two jobs. Either do those two jobs properly. I remember that I was going to try and do two jobs. I was trying to do a 60 hours. I was asking my employee to give me 60 hours. He said, Freed, you can't do 60 hours. Like you could do a 60-hour week, fine. But you can't actually do 60 hours every week. Like you can't be employed to do that. It's not going to work. Right. So like he's mature enough to like, why would I pay you to do 60 hours? You won't be able to do it. Right. It's not a thing that you can actually do on a regular basis. Right. It will fall apart at some point. And then you're not going to be right. You're not going to be respecting yourself. Right. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, respect yourself. You have a contract, fulfill that contract. Right. Or get out of the contract. Makes sense, inshallah. And it says, all grazing livestock have been made lawful to you, except that which is hereby announced to you, and hunting while on pilgrimage. You cannot hunt while on pilgrimage. Indeed, Allah commands what He wills. O believers, do not violate Allah's rituals of Hajj, pilgrims, and the sacred months, and the sacrificed animals, the offerings decorated with garlands, nor those pilgrims on their way to the sacred house, seeking their Lord's bounty and pleasure. When pilgrimage has ended, you are allowed to hunt. Don't hunt while in ihram, do hunt afterwards. And do not let the hatred of people who once barred you from the sacred mosque provoke you to transgress. Cooperate with one another in goodness and righteousness, and do not cooperate in sin and transgression. How is this relevant in financial transactions? وتعاونوا على البر والتقوى ولا تعاونوا على الإثم والعدوان. How is that relevant in financial transactions? Directly facilitating sin. How was that relevant to financial transactions? Interest, right? So the Prophet ﷺ, he said, the writer and the recorder, the person who writes down the contract, the person who records the contract, the person who makes the contract. I'm not doing the contract. I'm just the middleman. But you are directly facilitating interest, right? So anybody who directly facilitates sin is sinful, right? You gave me her number knowing what my intention was. You sold me this thing, pharmaceutical weed, knowing that I didn't use it for medical reasons. You dropped me off at this place knowing that I'm going to sin there, right? You sold me this knife knowing that I'm going to stab somebody with it, right? So you cannot do something that when you know that this person is going to use it for sin, right? If the person is, I don't know, buying a hamburger for their dog, they say, "Can I want it? My dog really wants a hamburger," and you make him a hamburger to eat. That's fine. I mean, non-halal meat hamburger, that's fine, right? But um, you know, you cannot cooperate in sin. You facilitate somebody doing the haram, right? You could be indirect. I develop software which in principle could be used for this. You know, there was one brother, he asked this question, he says, I'm a doctor and I work with like basically 90% of my patients are homosexuals. And I basically get them back on their feet, meaning I get them back on their feet so they can continue their sinful life, right? So he said, like, am I cooperating in sin and transgression? And I said, no, you're not, right? You're curing somebody, right? You're curing somebody to get back on their feet. Just because that indirectly leads them to sin, that doesn't mean that you're facilitating sin. You're facilitating their cure, right? So these are, you know, these are two different things, right? Two different things. Right? Khair. Does it make sense, inshallah? I think less interaction today, right? I think we should always talk about two topics, marriage and the Antichrist, right? Then everyone's gonna be talking the whole time, right? So my brother told me, he said, if you want to have people to turn up at the khutbah, say it's going to be about marriage, it's going to be about the Antichrist, about the Dajjal. Right? Otherwise, it's boring. It says, forbidden to you are carrion, so un-Islamically slaughtered meat, right? And so the exception to carrion is then life or death situation and hunting. So when you hunt, there's a different type of slaughter, right? Slightly different. So you can imagine, for example, you had a dog and the dog was chasing the hare and the dog's head bashed into the hare and the hare died through just like the brunt of the blow, right? The weight of the animal. It's halal. Okay, does that mean I can just hammer a sheep on the head and eat it? No, you can't. So with hunting is different, right? Why is that the case? Because of al-haja tanzil manzil darura. Difficulty is treated as duress. So you have the duress, life or death situation of I have to eat pork, otherwise I'll die. And then you have the widespread difficulty of properly slaughtering game animals, right? Does that make sense? Okay, so forbidden to you are carrion blood. Okay, so we just mentioned that al-haja tanzilu manzil darura, difficulty, widespread difficulty will be treated as duress. So can I eat, how does that apply to blood? When you eat meat, do you eat blood? Right? It's unavoidable to an extent, exactly. So to the extent that is unavoidable, you're excused, right? To the extent that it's unavoidable. You can't get all the blood out of an animal. It's not possible. Right? So, to the extent that it's unavoidable, you're excused. Why are you excused? Because it would be basically impossible to eat meat otherwise, right? Allah doesn't ask us to do impossible things. Right? Blood, swine, right? Now, the verse of the Quran says, does not say swine. It says the meat of pigs, the meat of pigs. So here's a question. What about pig fat? Can you eat pig fat? Because it says the meat of pig, right? This is a question maybe you can all research for next week. Um, yeah, what about pig fat or pig skin, right? Or pig bone? Can you clarify hunting? So hunting a hare, hunting a deer, right? You hunt a deer with a dog, with a rifle, that kind of thing, right? So there's some things you can't do. Like for example, you can't chase animals off a cliff, right? That doesn't count. Yeah, it's all halal, yeah. So normally I can't shoot an animal with a gun, but when hunting I can. Normally I can't just have my dog kill an animal and eat it. Can't do that. But you can with it. You can when hunting, because it's different. Use a falcon, right, to get a pigeon. You can do that. But you can't normally do that. You can't get the falcon to get your chicken in the back garden because why? The chicken is not a game animal, right? So when it's controllable, you got to slaughter it. So it's the same as the blood. To the extent that it's avoidable, it's got to be done normally. So you have control of this chicken, you got to slaughter it properly. Okay, I don't have control of these chicken, these pigeons. These are wild pigeons far away. Okay, so I'm gonna go take my falcon and go you do falconry. Yeah. Like you can't grab a deer or grab a bison. I mean, bison is a bit difficult. Very good question, Umair says. So forbidden to you in this case does it refer to forbidden to eat or does it refer to a wider meaning? It's debated in reality, right? So according to many of the scholars, using filth is haram. You cannot use filth. So then there's a whole issue about leather. Can you use leather? So some scholars say yes, leather is leather, meaning un-Islamically slaughtered leather. You can use it for water and that's it. You can't use it for anything else, right? So the Malikis, for example, they're very strict on leather. So you'd have to have like halal leather to wear. Now, non-halal leather will be okay, for example, carry water in it because people need to do that. But or they used to in the past, but like for clothes, no. So because haram for you is these things, you can't use these things. You can't use najasa and filth. And you can't, it's forbidden, right? But other scholars say no, what it means is forbidden is eating, right? Does that make sense? That's a good question. Okay. Okay. And what is killed by strangling, beating, a fall, or being gored to death, right? There was two, like I had two roosters, and the little one killed the big one, which is a bit of a shame, right? So can you eat it now? No, you can't eat it, right? Or what is partly eaten by a predator unless you slaughter it, and what is sacrificed to altars, right? So basically, as we know, then when hunting, it has to be Islamic. When it could be done with a rifle. It could be done with a bow, an arrow, crossbow. You could use a dog. You could use a hunting, a falcon or these kind of things. For normal things, you have to slaughter. You have to cut the neck, right? So according to many scholars, Mason, leather is pure because it was a dead animal, was not Islamically slaughtered, but then they tanned it and it became pure. So it's totally fine, right? As opposed to pig leather, it's not. Pig leather is not pure. Okay. So that means then meat by default, if it's not halal, is not halal, right? And then also when people label things as halal, which is not halal, then it doesn't mean anything, right? Like when I was in Jordan and it says the fish is said Islamically slaughtered, right? So you know that if the organization labels fish as Islamically slaughtered, you know that they don't mean anything by, when they say halal, they don't mean halal, right? So yeah, so the key concept is al-'ada muhakkama. Convention, norms, what is normally the case shall be the arbiter. So I live in America, is meat normally is when they say halal, is it normally actually halal? No. Okay, so then you can't rely on it. If it is normally halal, then fine. So if it's not normally halal, then you can't, right? If I'm in Malaysia, right, the meat by default is halal. So I don't need to even ask. I don't have to look for a halal label or even question the halal organization. But if you live in a country where the meat is not by default halal, then you have to check if it's halal. And if halal doesn't normally actually mean halal, then, right? So when you go to someone's house, if they don't normally eat halal, then you have to find out, right? But if they normally eat halal, then you don't have to find out, right? When you're buying a car, if cars are normally not stolen, then you don't have to ask if it's stolen. But if cars are normally stolen and it's a second-hand car, then you're going to have to what's it called, check, right? If Yusuf normally steals Zaid's things and gives them to you without permission, then you have to ask, Yusuf, did you steal it this time? He says no. Are you lying this time? Yes, right? So Yusuf normally lies and normally steals and he gives you something, right? So now you have to check. If that's not normally the case, you don't have to check. Does that make sense? Al-'ada muhakkama, right? We're not asking you for a forensic check. We're not answering for, bringing it's not like that, right? But what is normal? What is the norm, right? And I lived in America. The norm in North America is that meat isn't halal, and the norm is that halal doesn't mean halal. That's the picture that you get from people, right? So therefore, you have to be a bit annoying, right? Not because you want to be annoying, it's just because the norm is that everyone else is annoying. If that makes sense. Like imagine if the whole world was filled with regularly lying, regularly stealing Omar Mohsins. Like people offer you things like, is it actually yours? And like, yeah. Are you lying this time? Yeah. And it's like, oh, it's annoying. Your life becomes very stressful, right? You say, Yusuf, is there a meeting today? He says, yeah. What time? 3 o'clock. And you're there at 3 o'clock. He's like, haha, tricked you. He's like, dude, you're so annoying, right? He's like, yeah, but you knew. So if you were surrounded by people who are dropping the ball, you have to pick it up. Does that make sense? So that's where we are right now. Like we're surrounded by people who are dropping the ball. So it's like, dude, it's not halal and it's labeled as halal. And you don't know what halal is. And most meat is not halal. So therefore you have to check. But if people are normally eating halal food and halal normally means halal, then you don't have to check. Make sense? Hmm. So Ahmed, when you say it makes sense, is it do you usually mean that you make sense or just should I check?
I think you should check shit.
Get to check. Okay, great. Right. But checking the non-default is OCD, right? Right. Let me just check where my wife is. She said she was at work, but is she actually at work? You know what I'm saying? Like that's not healthy, is it? That's not a healthy thing. Just checking where you are. What would you expect me to be? You know, that's not healthy. Brother, do you have urine and feces and vomit in your food? No, I don't. Is that a norm? You know what I'm saying? Like that's not you don't go up saying, excuse me, did you vomit in this hamburger before you gave it to me? Like, why would you ask that question? That's not normal, right? Hey brother, are you an AI robot? Like that's not normal yet, right? Soon it'll be normal, but until right for now, it's like that's not normal. Like you don't have to find out is the imam an AI robot? You know, that's not a normal question to ask. That's not healthy and not necessary. Well, if someone lies to you, that's fine, right? So I stole a car, okay? I stole a car, and you asked me, said, okay, why is it so cheap? Say, oh, alhamdulillah, right? My cousin was just giving it away. And I sold you the car, and you didn't know that it was stolen. It's fine, right? It's haram meat. You look at me, I have a beard, I lead the prayer in the masjid, and I say, no, brother, it's all right. Does that make sense, Mason? So if someone lies to you, that's their problem. But the issue is if you know that they're going to lie to you, right? So I know that you're going to lie to me, and then I say, are you lying? It's like, no. It's like, well, I know you're lying, so the point is you can't, you understand, Mason? Like, if you know, like a lot of people are like this, they'll be like, brother, it's all halal. What they mean is eat it. Like, so for example, Mason, you go to the East, everybody in the East speaks indirectly for some random reason. Like, right, Yusuf? Like, people don't speak straight. That's not how they speak. If they speak like, they're like, hey, do you have a house for rent? And they'd be like, yes, meaning I'm interested in the idea in general. Right, Yusuf? If I go to Yemen, I'm like, ask somebody, hey, I'm looking for a house to rent. Do you have a house rent? He'd say, yes. What he means is in general, like I could find somebody, like he doesn't say yes, no. They don't speak like that. So you're talking to people who speak like that, and like you ask him, is it halal? He what he means is, I think is a good idea. I think I think it's a good idea for you to buy the food. That's what he means. And you know that, right? Then like you say, hey, you're going to be here tomorrow, and so says inshallah. That means no, right? The term is low context culture. Interesting. High context culture. Yeah. Okay. High context culture. The first time hearing that term, right? So you need to know the context of what they mean. So as opposed to I go to the shop, right? I go to the shop and the default is they're not going to lie to me, right? So for example, I call up China Air and I say, is your meat halal? And they say yes. The default is China Air is not going to lie about it being halal. The question is, what does halal mean to China Air, right? That's what I'm interested in, right? Because a company like China Air is not going to lie to you about that because you could sue them, right? But the question is, what do they mean by China? What does halal mean in China, right? Normally, whereas in America, halal means anything. There's no condition in America. Like you can do anything. Kosher as well. You and I we can start a kosher thing right now, and as long as we define our terms of what kosher is, it's fine. Nobody can sue you. You define your terms. You show that it's being applied. That there's third party checks on your products that this is kosher according to what you mean by kosher. That's fine. You can sell it as kosher, right? So halal is the same thing. I ask people in the industry, it's totally fine to sell any chicken, any beef, whatever happens to it, and say it's halal as long as as long as it's been checked, and as long as that certification has a definition. So you contact those certifiers and they say, what is your definition of halal? And they say any meat slaughtered in America anyway, as long as it's not pork. That's what they mean, right? So it's a problem. Does that make sense? So don't be OCD, but just look at what's a norm. Is it normal that people lie? Is it normal that people don't know what halal is? Right? You check those two variables. You ask the brother, is this halal food? Is it normal that he eats haram food? You know, you get married, and it turns out 10 years later that the girl's dad is actually her big brother. So the big brother married you off, and you thought that was her dad. So they lied to you. Is that normal? It didn't look like it. She was actually married. That was what? Like, you married somebody who was actually married. Are you sinful? No, I had no idea that she was actually married. Like, what's the default? Like, religious people, is it default that the whole world is lying to me? No, it's not. So you don't have to go like find out, hey, by the way, you're actually married or not, you know? And are you lying about that or not? That's not, you're not obliged to do that at all. Make sense? So don't go to extremes. What is normal, right? What is normal? Um, and what is partly eaten by da da da. You are also filmed of drawing lots of decisions. This is basically the spin arrows to find out what am I going to do today, or who gets this and who gets that, right? You're using spinning arrows to do that. This is all evil. Today the disbelievers give up all hope of undermining your faith. So do not fear them, but rather fear me. Go ahead, Zaid.
Does that apply to things like flipping a coin?
Say it again.
Would that verse apply to things? Sorry, would that verse apply to things like flipping a coin?
No, it's fine.
Yeah.
The Prophet ﷺ did that, for example, when he traveled. They draw lots. Which wife is he going to take with him? All right, you can do that. You can't do that like in transactions. Like, hey, you're gonna pay $10 and get one of these things, and when we're gonna find on a you get one of these three things, and we're gonna spin a thing to get it. You can't do that. But for example, let's say, for example, you both of you, who has a right? Who's gonna go first? Flip a coin. That's fine. Yeah. Okay, so today the disbelievers have given up all hope of undermining your faith. And so notice key things: blood, pork, dead animals, filth, rituals. When we talk when we get into the occult world, and the occult world is a real world, and it's not such a weird world that nobody's involved in it. It's very much part of our society, the occult world. So these are all symbols and connections. When you say Bismillah, you're closing the door to the shaitan. When you don't say Bismillah, you're opening the door to shaitan. When you're eating halal food, you're closing the door to the shaitan. When you eat filth, carrion, blood, right? Alcohol, you're opening the. So these are physical and spiritual connections, right? Research it. Like, go research. Say, can I get into black magic? And you start realizing they're going to list a lot of these things. Make sure you don't make wudu, filth, right? Filth is a very important thing, right? These connections, these are pathways, right? That to these worlds, right? So the disbelievers have given up all hope of undermining your faith because you're using all the wrong pathways, right? And these are very important things. So do not fear them, fear me. Very important. Marriage. Don't fear your husband. Don't fear your wife. Don't fear your in-laws. Don't fear what they're going to say about you and they're not going to say about you. Don't fear the government. Don't fear what is it? Bob Marley, have no fear for atomic energy, right? Right? Don't fear World War IV. Don't fear being judged, but fear me. Very important. It's so awkward praying in public. Yeah, but don't fear them, fear me. It's so awkward speaking the truth. It's so awkward being weird. It's so awkward being the only hijabi around. It's so awkward being whatever it is, right? Don't fear them, fear me, right? The only marriage that doesn't have music in it. The only whatever it is, right? We have to have this punk attitude. It's very important. And it's much more welcome in the West than it is in the East, right? Sue me mentality, right? And you will be imprisoned and you will be hated, and that's fine. That's what happened to the Sahaba, right? There's a certain point where if you're solid in your deen, you will be abused and you will be persecuted. So that's coming, right? That's something that's, one way or the other. Almost more in Muslim countries than anywhere else, right? A secretary that's fired because she wears a niqab. Secretary is fired because she doesn't dress in tight enough clothes. That happens in the East, right? People who are married, people who don't get married because they're too religious, right? The Prophet said at the end of time, the religious person will be more pathetic in the eyes of the people around him than the skinny sheep that's about to die, skinny lamb that's pointless. Like if you gave it to the dogs, they couldn't even eat anything from it. So what's it called? Embrace being pathetic and stupid in people's eyes. It's very important. Embrace it. Don't fear them, fear me. Don't fear being judged by them. Fear how Allah is going to judge you. Very, very important. And it makes you strong, right? And it makes you a very powerful person. Right? So what do? So the hand teaches the heart. Say things and do things. So I got myself into a lot of trouble at work doing dumb things because basically I didn't want to say something to my manager because I was scared. So then I'd intentionally say it and get in trouble, which is stupid. But like things like praying in public, right? Pray in public. It's awkward. When you pray in public, your fear of people becomes less. When you wear hijab in a place where nobody wears hijab, your iman skyrockets, right? That's how it works. When you pray on the plane when no one else is praying on the plane, your iman skyrockets, right? When everyone's laughing about God, right? Somebody makes a joke about God in a meeting at work, and you put your hand up and say, I personally find that offensive, actually, as a person who believes in God. Can we keep the topic to the actual meeting? And everyone's like, weirdo, or you're like a whatever. They don't like what whatever it is. When you don't do the right things at the wedding that everyone else does, right? And everyone's like, you're just weird, crazy. And everyone's gonna, when you fight your fear and you act as if you don't scared, you don't become scared anymore, right? SubhanAllah, my son, we're going to skate park now. Dropping in. Does everyone know what that means in skateboarding or blading? To drop in on a ramp? Yeah. So it's quite intimidating, and you actually hurt yourself because basically you're scared, so you don't commit yourself, and then you fall over, and it really hurts. So I remember like dropping in like for the first time, like it's really hard, right, to commit, and then you get used to it, right? So the same thing, praying in public, walking down the street, and you're the only hijabi, putting your hand up saying, I believe in God, and everyone's like, huh? Right? I believe in an organized religion, like, oh, you're a weirdo, Yeah, I think kids should listen to your parents. You're like super extremist or whatever it is, right? So these things will come up and it's going to get worse. So you have to fight now. You have to have the inner fight and the outer fight now. I have to run, inshallah, because otherwise it's going to get very difficult. Inshallah. We'll stop here. Wa sallallahu ala sayyidina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi.